What's up, Internet friends, and welcome to another episode of the PlayStation Plus Game Club. I am your host, Kevin Garaventa, and this is a show where we pick one game from the PlayStation Plus library and break it down for your entertainment, information, and amusement. This time, we are talking about Inscryption, developed by Daniel Mullins Games and published by Devolver Digital. It was first released on PC in 2021, and then on other platforms over the course of 2022 and 2023. It sounds very strange when I try to describe Inscryption, but it's a game where you are playing a card game against some sort of faceless entity across a table in a dark cabin. Other odd things happen where sometimes characters in the cards start to talk to you, or your opponent asks you to get something from somewhere else in the room, which then leads you to get up and discover a hidden item or card that can gain you an advantage in the next match. If you think that sounds weird, just wait, because it gets a lot weirder. And to help us go down that rabbit hole is returning PS Plus Game Club member Jordan Vickers. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Kevin. I really can't wait to talk about this game.
Well, I'm really glad you picked it, because I don't know if I would have gotten around to finishing this game or even playing it just from what it looked like, but I was curious. So I really appreciate you picking this game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into a stop right here for spoiler section, but everything he said, if you are into card games and a little bit of puzzle solving mechanics, stop right now. Just download this game and play it, because it is one of those games, the less you know, the more rewarding everything is.
Yeah.
Also, it is definitely a spooky vibe game, but I really wouldn't say horrific. No giant jump scares or loud, horrible sounds. Although the sound design in here is great.
It is.
But yeah, I highly recommend, if you're just a little bit curious, stop this podcast right now if you haven't played it. Go for it. And then, for the love of God, remember that we did this podcast and like it, you know?
Yeah. I do plan on having a very vague discussion about the first part of the game, and I don't feel like there's much to spoil in that, but eventually we are going to say, if you are at all curious about this game, stop right now and go play it, and then come back and listen to the rest, because there's a lot to talk about that I do want to discuss with you in general to give people an idea of what this game looks like. And there were points of time where I had seen screenshots of this game and got curious about it and kind of learned a little bit more and was like, well, I know I shouldn't learn more if I am going to play it, and I'll walk away from this. But I had no idea what it was that I was avoiding. And as much as a couple of times I felt like I got spoiled by something, no, I knew nothing about this game. And it is quite incredible. So before we start talking about all of that, Jordan, is there anything that you would like to talk about? Any projects that you're working on?
Yeah, I just launched my own podcast, Finish Game Review. We take a game that is 100% done as far as we know. Granted, there could always be another remaster way down the line or whatever, but the point is, as far as we know, the last DLC, the last update is out. And it could even be a game that didn't even have an update, like an old NES game. But the Finish Game Review, we did an episode on Hades, and we'll be doing an episode on Valkyria Chronicles this week. Hopefully it'll be out by the time this is out as well. And then next month, we are doing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I am so excited. Me and Slugger, who was also a PlayStation member, he's going to talk about it with me. And with the last DLC just came out, and man, this game is awesome.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of Mario Kart myself, but I do know that they've been releasing new tracks and new racers about once every 3 months for the past 3 years now?
2 years.
And
2 years.
Okay, 2 years. It is ridiculous how much they keep adding to that game. But they've announced that their final
It,
DLC is coming out. Unless
it's already out.
it's already out. Okay. So
It's done. It's finished. And if you guys haven't picked it up already, go do that.
it's finally finished. Like it is a finally finished game. So I'm really glad you guys are going to be talking about that.
Yeah,
It
but
seems like it's taken about maybe 10 years for that game to continuously come out because it started on the Wii U.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk all about that next month. But for right now, we got so much to talk about Inscryption.
So much about Inscryption. So if you want to be part of an episode just like Jordan here, please email us at the PS Plus Game Club at gmail.com with game suggestions or thoughts you have about our monthly featured game. If you enjoy this episode and want to hear more, please like and subscribe to the show if you haven't already. It really helps us show up in more recommendation feeds and with our listenership and just helping share what's good on the PlayStation Plus Extra library. But let's take this rabbit hole down through Inscryption. How would you describe what this game is? Like, I have a hard time just trying to explain to somebody like how this game works. It's a card game where you play cards against just like a faceless pair of eyes across the table in a dark room. How would you describe this to somebody?
The simplest way to really describe it is there's two main mechanics. You have the card game that has a little bit of a board game element that helps you build your deck through each playthrough. It is a rogue light in that sense where you start from scratch every time you lose or whatever. However, you can get up from the playing table and then you walk around this small cabin and it is like an old school escape the room kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And you need to do a little bit of the board game and a little bit of the escape a room, and they kind of combined in certain fun ways that we won't spoil just yet. But essentially, this turns into a mystery of what is going on. And that mystery keeps getting weirder and weirder, but not in the sense of I'm totally lost.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if you feel lost, it will come together.
Yeah. So first, let's explain the card game itself that you're playing. You've got a set of cards that have animal pictures on them and a set of numbers, and then you choose to play down these cards, and these cards attack your opponent. And you've got like 4 spaces that you can play cards in, and then your cards attack the opponent, and then the opponent's cards attack you. And there's a scale next to the card playing field that shows like who's in like the balance of power right now, who's doing more damage, and once enough damage is dealt to one side, the other side wins. So it's kind of it's a very simple start, but then certain cards have special abilities. Like some cards will attack the two adjacent lanes instead of the one space ahead of them. They will, or like other ones will, instead of attacking, they'll just sit there and you can play other cards if you sacrifice that card and kill it. There are some cards that just don't have any special abilities, but just attack, and they're more powerful or something. But there's something very simple on the surface, but then the more you play it, the more complex it becomes, because you start to see what else you could do with these cards. And there are like chain reactions that you can even create with cards that help you take advantage of what the playing field looks like even more.
Absolutely. And a huge element of this game is it seems like this game seems super unfair at first.
Yeah. Like any
And
roguelike, you know?
yeah, and like any roguelike, you literally get to that point of, well, how am I supposed to beat that? But the beauty of this game is the more you play, the more you understand. And then there will come to a point where you yourself can become overpowered and this guy who's you're facing with the entire game, he seems so overpowered, but you can build your deck where no, you're the overpowered one and it's rewarding. It's a game that wants you to break its mechanics.
Yeah. What can you say about this guy that doesn't spoil anything? He's just like he's almost like a dungeon master that is sitting across from you, and you're playing this board game with him, and he describes what's happening in the board game as if you're playing D&D.
Yeah, you are represented by this token on this very simple map. And when you're not in battle, the token will move forward a bit, and there are points where the branching path will go one side or another, and you have these symbols on the map along the way.
Yeah.
Each symbol represents a different thing. One could represent a battle, and the others are different ways you can upgrade or gain new cards.
Yeah. These spaces, they do different things depending on what the image is when you land on it. And what's what's very frustrating at first is that the game doesn't tell you what any of these spaces are. You just have to like go there and see like, well, what's going to happen? Oh, this is a sacrificial altar. I'm going to have to sacrifice one of my cards. Great. So like I had no idea the first time I happened upon that symbol on the space, but I was like, well, I don't know what that does, but I'm going to go check it out. And it could either harm or hinder your performance or your progress further. So like, there's just like in any other roguelike, the game doesn't tell you what things are until it's too late, oftentimes. They just let you try things out and you get to see what happens.
Correct. And I think there's like 7, maybe 8 different icons. There's not a whole lot. And by the time of your second playthrough, maybe third, you'll realize what most of them do,
Yeah.
which is so it's not overbearing on like, oh, what does this one do again? They're also very simplified. Usually once when you do it once or twice, you get it, you
Yeah.
understand, okay, that's what that space does.
Yeah. I think the last one that I happened upon was the mushroom, and I was just like, well, what does the mushroom do? Like, let's find out. And then as soon as I saw what it was, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna forget that. That was pretty cool. But also there is an escape room style game attached to this as well. So if you end up losing a match against this opponent, he will tell you to get up and go get a candle. And this is the first time you've realized you can get up from the table. And moving around this room is pretty simple because it controls a little bit more like Myst did, where you can't just move anywhere within the room. You have a set amount of space that you can move from one position to the next. And then when you turn and try to interact with something, there's only a few things that you can interact with. So because of that structure, because there's just very little that you can interact with, that makes the escape room function of this game a lot easier because you know what you can interact with, and there isn't much ambiguity in terms of what works in this room and what doesn't.
Yeah, and there are some really simple clues at first at like what to do, and we won't spoil them. But if you figure out like, well, what am I supposed to do? If you just look a little bit, you might see a random number somewhere, and you'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
I think I know what to do with this number immediately.
Or maybe one of the cards happens to start talking to you. And after he makes fun of you and the bad plays that you're doing, he might tell you, like, oh, you could find the combination to this safe over here. Go look.
Yeah,
It is one of those things where like the card game itself starts to influence the escape room, and the escape room starts to influence your card game when you go in that one spot and like unlock something new that you can play with. Like it might be another talking card that also starts to talk to you and tell you more things about the game.
yeah. And another interesting element, the guy, whatever he is,
Mm-hmm.
he just stays there. He
Yeah.
doesn't get up, he doesn't harm you. You can't harm him, and he's always staying in shadow. This is a really dark cabin, and you can literally be right next to the guy, look right at him, and you be like, I don't know what you are.
Yeah.
I have no
Yeah.
clue.
What's funny too is when he tells you to go get up and go get the candle, he will say, "Don't touch anything else." And then you can walk around the room and touch everything and interact with
Yeah.
everything. And he just like if you open something up and find an item in a drawer, he'll say like, "Oh yeah, bring that over here. Yeah, let's play with that. We can add that to your collection or whatever." So he doesn't seem to mind. He just tells you like, "Don't touch anything," and then you can go and get everything you need. And the whole time he's just sitting there watching you. So it's still kind of creepy because you just see this dark pair of eyes over in the corner of the room, and you're just like, I can take this knife. This is cool. Okay. What happens if you end up losing a match again? Because this is something that I definitely do want to talk about.
Well, okay.
This is
Well,
minor.
I'm
This is a minor spoiler, but
this is a minor spoiler.
this is something that I do think it would give people a better idea of like how this game feels, like really what the mood is of this game. When you lose another match, he takes one of those candles on the candelabra and extinguishes it.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, well, okay, that's bad. I know that if I lose both candles, this is going to be really bad, probably. And if you lose both, if you lose two matches, and by the way, if you lose one match, you can continue on the board game. You don't have to retry the match, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
But
And there are boss levels in this game. Once when you beat a boss, once you reach a boss, he'll immediately extinguish your candles to just one.
yeah,
So if you have two, he'll extinguish one, but in trade for that, he'll give you a bonus card called the smoke.
yeah, yeah.
If you're just down to one, he leaves you totally alone. If you beat the boss, he lights a candle.
Yeah.
So you're back to two.
Yeah. And the most you can have is two. But if you lose them both, he ends up, he extinguishes both candles and then he reaches across the table and the screen goes black. And then the next thing you see is him pulling you through a doorway, which is the only doorway in the cabin, pulling you through the doorway into this room that has a flickering light. And then he has you create your own playing card with its own stats. And you get to name it. And then he takes a picture of you, and that kills your character. And that's the end of the game, or at least the end of your run.
Then you start off all together with a brand new character. And it doesn't let you know what you just made with that card.
No.
You figure it out later when you realize at one of those parts where you can pick up a card and add it to your deck. It'll sometimes pop up and be like, wait a minute, that's the card I made earlier. And when that clicks, you're like, okay, so if I die, I should pick out the best options possible.
Yeah. I should try and make the most overpowered card I can get because that gives me a better chance in the next run. And what's really funny is when you start the next run, sitting across the table, he just says, well, another challenger. I hope this is a better person than the last one. By the way, this character is not voiced at all. He just like his voice is a sound effect that sounds like it's from one of the old Apple II computers. It sounds very it's like deep and it's grunty, and that's the sound of his voice. And it's an aesthetic that really adds to the atmosphere. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, like we said earlier, the sound design in here is very, very interesting. You're not quite sure because, like, the other thing about this game, everything looks super gritty. Like, the graphics aren't really that good,
Mm-hmm.
but that's on
Yeah.
purpose. Like, you walk around the cabin and everything just seems really very off. And
Yeah.
but the cards themselves are very well detailed in such a strange way
Yeah.
that again it meshes in a very cool way that you're like, it adds to the mystery of what the hell is going on here.
Yeah. It's like almost everything, even though you're playing in a first person view, everything is still slightly pixelated. Like
Yeah,
it is being seen through some sort of filter. So it, again, like the aesthetic is very strange. But I do think that maybe, like, let's talk about what one of those bosses looks like, just the first one, the prospector. And like to give people an idea of, like, you know, what does a boss mean in a card game? He's this first of all, the opponent takes out a mask and puts it on, and then as a true D&D master, he will, you know, start
act
to
out.
embody this character that he is now playing, and you have to fight this guy called the prospector, who will send out cards of his own, and then like start saying things like there's gold in them cards, and after you beat him one time, he will like smash all of your cards and turn them into gold, which then, you know, can't fight, they can't attack, and so you just kind of have to draw new cards and wait until his cards destroy yours, so then you have some open space to start playing again.
Yeah, for instance, normally you have to tip the scales just once fully on an opponent's side in normal matches.
Yeah,
In boss matches, you got to do it twice.
yeah, yeah,
So in the prospector fight, you lay down your cards, and he has a special card called the mule. The mule actually helps you. You have to destroy the mule, and it's a pack mule. So when you destroy it, all these cards on its back will actually go into your hand automatically and help you.
yeah. They become
However,
yours.
once when you tip his scale all the way, it's like you said, everything in your playing field, he immediately gets rid of, and he puts in a boulder, which is very, very weak. It will block your defense, but not for very long.
Yeah. And, you know, in a sense, like, he'll also kill the cards that you were using that helped you win. And so it's kind of a shock at first, because it's just kind of, you start to think like, man, you're a real jerk. I just won, and you're, you know, saying we have to go a second round, and there's rocks in my way, and I don't get my cards back. Uh,
Yeah.
you also mentioned tipping the scales. I'm not going to say what happens, but there are tools that he gives you that you can use at any point during the game to tip the scales in your favor. However, I would say that what these tools do tend to be kind of graphic. So, in terms of what the aesthetic is, and I don't want to say what these tools are and what they do, but in terms of like something being slightly violent, I do think like this is where the game does kind of like skirt that line into like, this might be triggering for some people. So I don't know if
They
um
don't make this very gory
no.
or bloody, but it gives you a, oh,
Yeah.
ouch, I would
There
never
is
do that in my real life sort of
there is
scenario.
a shock to this game. So uh
One's a light shock and one's a really big, like, "Oh my god, can't believe that just happened," sort of thing.
it really depends on what, you know, what your feelings are toward each, but um that's all I think we should say about it. And then,
Yeah.
so the prospector is this boss that you fight, and then once you've beaten him, you get a special card that is like one of the rare cards, and then you move on to a new place where uh, the your opponent is saying, you know, that you have left the forest. Now you are entering the swamp area, and he describes like there are flies buzzing everywhere. You can smell the putrid water over in the distance, and it's like it's great how he describes and illustrates this other world that you're not seeing at all. You're just seeing the map.
Yeah, and, well, the thing is there any last things you wanna talk about before we pull off the spoiler warning? Because we are
I
pretty much
I
there.
I think we're there. So the only other thing I want to know is, how would you rate this game?
Unless if you are super, super squeamish, I mean, like, very squeamish,
Yeah.
I would definitely, this is worth your money.
Yeah.
Um, Even if you don't have PlayStation Plus, like, I bought it on the PC. Originally, I had a great time. Oh, I should warn you. If you play this on the PC, do not stream this game if you have some things on your computer.
The-
Let's just keep it at that.
I'd
Um,
recommend just playing this on PlayStation, or
yeah,
just
yeah,
playing this on your PC, but be aware that you are playing it on your computer at that point, and that's all I should say. But yeah, I have to agree with you. This is definitely worth trying out if you've got PlayStation Plus. I thought it was interesting at first, but it really took me, like with many roguelikes, it took me a few tries to really start to like what it was I was playing. And before then, I was just kind of curious, and I thought, well, this is the game we're playing for the month. All right. But after a few runs, it was kind of like, oh, no, I really do want to find out what's happening here, because I know that people have said this is going to get really weird.
yeah. And
Yeah.
if you get into it and you do feel stuck, Google is really good at typing out like your specific problem. Like, what do I do at this point without giving you the straight answer without spoiling things ahead?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to go to a guide if you really feel like you need to.
Or if you see something in the game and you want to know, like, hey, what does this do? Like, because I'm not entirely sure what, like, I have this, but what, I don't know what it's for. You can Google it and probably
There
avoid
is
spoilers.
Yeah, there is one item in particular I think they should have done a better job of hinting on how to use it.
Yeah.
That is kind of mandatory for the game.
Yeah.
But other than that, this game's great.
Yeah.
I freaking love
Yeah.
it.
So before we start to jump into spoilers, I want to have a very quick actual books and more recommendations for this book club style podcast. Are there any games that you can think of that take a major turn that anyone just starting to play could never predict?
Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yes, that is definitely one. Also, Had a Full Boyfriend in that same vein. Definitely
Yeah,
goes a direction I wouldn't expect.
yeah. Something of that type of vibe, except probably a little bit less extreme on the graphic violence.
Yeah, yeah,
This definitely goes places.
yeah, yeah.
And when you are done, you will probably be like, "What was up with that one part?" Like, there is another rabbit hole that we can talk about later on that you will probably just go straight to YouTube and be like, "Well, what was up with that?" And you will get answers, and you will be shocked at what you see.
I am shocked that you said just another rabbit hole and not another 10 rabbit holes, because this, it seriously, it goes places. But anything else that you're reading or watching or playing that you'd like to recommend?
A buddy of mine just gave me the biggest book of my life that I just finished. It's called Shogun by James Clavell.
Okay.
It is a alternate history about the first Englishman who went to Japan, and there's an FX series coming out in a couple of months. There's a trailer for it already. It looks gorgeous.
Oh,
This
nice. Okay.
book is over 1,100 pages though, and it took me over 50 hours to listen to it on Audible.
Oh, man. Okay. That sounds like that. I often think about some books being like an entire season of TV, and it sounds like this one is like 3 seasons of TV all in one book.
Oh, it easily could be.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Speaking of books turned into TV shows, I just finished the first book in the Expanse series. That one's called Leviathan Wakes, and man, it is really cool. I don't remember much from the TV series, but I remember liking it, and it felt like every time I got to a specific plot point, I would suddenly remember like oh yeah, this was in the show, and so that was really cool. Great book. Highly recommend reading that one, especially if you're into things like Game of Thrones, but also in space. Next month, we are going to be talking about something a bit more fun, and it is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. Looks like we're going to be closing out the year with a blockbuster. So, hope you have some fun playing that. Jordan, have you played Guardians of the Galaxy yet?
I have not It's on my to-do list,
Yeah.
and man, what a to-do list I've got. Oh,
Oh,
it's
so
been one of the best years of games. I can't wait to see how many games will be on Jeff Keighley's nomination list this year.
okay. I think
So,
the estimate I have going for it is probably around the 20s. So there's so many. So
oh my god.
all right. Before we jump into spoilers, remember that if you want to be part of the PlayStation Plus Game Club, please again write in to psplusgameclub@gmail.com with any thoughts you have about our monthly game or any suggestions you have for a future game. With all of that out of the way, though, let's really dive into spoilers about Inscryption.
All right. So once when you get to the second boss, you die, game over. Hey, great podcast.
The second boss is the Angler, and if you beat him quickly enough, like if you just have really good cards, he straight up just sends out a bunch of powerful cards to kill you, and that's the end. It's one of those things where it's like, no, you're getting too good. You need to take a step back.
Okay, what you're describing is that is if you get to him in the first couple of times, the sad thing is you can't beat this game your first run, even if you go back and know what you're doing. I've tried. I've beaten this game multiple times. You actually need to die, I think, twice before you can actually get to the final boss. Otherwise, he just flat out won't let you. And that is a mark against the game. I wish you could, because I really don't see any reason why you shouldn't. And we'll get to that part later on. But
Yeah,
as for the angler himself, if you play him normally, his first gimmick is he has these cards. Its gimmick is they dive underwater, so you can't attack the cards directly.
right.
Um, and that has its pros and cons to it in itself. But once when you get to a second phase, the cards that are on the table, he'll place this thing called a chum bucket in front of each card. And if you hit that bucket, what happens is a shark, which is really powerful, takes its place.
Yeah,
And that also dives underwater, so you can't kill it immediately.
yeah,
And the trick is, how do I damage this thing without touching the bucket? And the problem is, when you attack with all the cards on the table. You don't get to pick and choose, well, this one attacks, this one doesn't. They all, whatever's played out there, will attack.
yeah. I told you this happened on Discord because you were just asking like,
Yeah.
"Hey, what's going? Like, how you liking it?" And I told you like, "Oh, like I got to this guy, and then there were a bunch of bait buckets that I knocked over by accident because my cards were already on the table, and I got killed by sharks." So you're like, "Hey, try some flying things next time." And so yeah, you gotta have cards that fly. So they, instead of attacking the cards directly in front of them, they fly over them and attack your opponent directly. And like that's how you beat the second boss. So that's something that I appreciate about how specifically roguelikes set you up, where you can get to the to a certain point and be really powerful, but in the wrong way. And you end up just getting knocked back down because you haven't invested in the specific thing that will let you get past that one point.
Yeah. Going back to like the mechanics and everything, like one thing I think you kind of forgot. You briefly touched upon it, but how you play a card is like almost everything has a cost. And you literally use creatures you already have in your playing field to use that cost. So,
Yeah.
example, like a bear is your highest cost, and it costs 4 blood. So, what that means is each creature counts as 1 blood.
Hmm.
So you need 4 cards to sacrifice on the playing field before you can play that card.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you essentially have 2 decks. You have your main deck, and then you have these free 0 attack, 1 defense squirrels that are absolutely free. They don't cost anything to lay down, and you can only draw 1 of those per turn or 1 of your main deck per turn.
Yeah. But then you can also get cards that have these special abilities. And one of them that I got very early on was the cat. And if you have a cat, what you can do is play a squirrel and then sacrifice that squirrel. And the cat costs 1 sacrifice. So then you play the cat. And the cat's special ability is that it doesn't die when it gets sacrificed. So now you've got a cat on the board. And in the same turn, then I play like I can play
Roll
something
and
else,
a
like another squirrel, and then I sacrifice the squirrel and the cat stays there on the board and it comes back to life, and I can play down a wolf. And now the cat allows me to play other stuff that is a high cost at a lower cost. So it is what's described in many card games as like a ramp card, because it lets you ramp up your energy faster than normal.
There is another currency you get called bones, and how you collect bones is every time a one of your card dies or an opponent, you automatically get 1 bone, and that counts as a sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think if I remember right, there are no cards that require in the main game. We'll talk about that later. Uh there are no cards that be like, well, this costs 3 blood and 2 bone. It's either blood or bone, which is
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
nice.
So like,
And
the more cards you lose, the more potential you have on playing a card that costs bones, because then you have like this extra currency that you can then turn around and turn into an advantage for yourself.
and this is a pro tip if you're kind of in the middle of the game or you want to go back. I had to look this up, but you will always start each round with a card that costs 1.
Yeah.
And that can be really helpful to know if you're doing what they call Casey's mod,
Hmm.
because what that means is whatever that 1 card that costs 1, I better make sure it's damn important because I know I will immediately get in my hand
Yeah.
every single time I start.
Yeah, that was something
Eh,
that I actually only learned last night when I was looking up a couple of other videos for this game. And had I known that earlier, it would have probably helped me build my decks a lot better, because a handful of times there would be times where I'd have a really good 1 cost card and then never draw it because I was always starting in my hand with other 1 cost cards.
Yeah, like it's very tempting to get your deck full of 1 cost cards, and you would say to yourself, well, bears are good, but they're so expensive. If you can play your cards right, literally, you can pull bears like they're no tomorrow. A great example for that, there's a goat which cost 1,
Hmm.
but if every time you sacrifice a goat, it is worth 3.
Yeah.
And if there are spots on the table, one of these spots is you can sacrifice 1 card's ability and give it to another. So, like what you said with the cat, if you give the goat a cat's ability, you immediately, instead of just sacrificing 1 each turn and it automatically turns it up again, you can do 3, and that is a huge game changer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a combination I had never thought of. But as soon as you said it, I thought like, "Oh, now that's a hell of a ramp card right there." Because
Oh yeah.
you can pretty much like do whatever you want, and as long as you keep the goat alive, you're getting 3 sacrificial blood drops every turn, no matter what. But like that is a great point. Anyway, let's talk about the third boss really quick. The trapper.
Oh,
So
Trapper's probably the easiest boss in the game.
yeah.
It's ironic because his first phase is harder than his second phase, and his music is one of the best in the game because it's what I would describe um, ASMR for the tortured soul.
Yeah. So he sends out these mechanical frogs that When you kill them, they turn into bear traps, which will kill whatever is attacking it. And so you pretty much are guaranteed to lose the cards that you use to win in this round. And then when they die, you get pelts, which then you can trade with the trapper, and he will trade pelts for powerful cards that he has just played onto the board. And they're completely randomized. So some of these cards like might have really good stats, but they also might have abilities that just do not match what they can do whatsoever. And so if you were to have them in your hand, they would be useless as far as playing a card. So they are completely random as far as what these cards are. But however many pelts you've got in your hand, you can trade those in to the trapper and buy some of those cards from him that he has just played down and make the game a little bit easier. So,
Yeah,
ironically, the worse you do in the first round, the easier it probably will be in the second round, which is hilarious to think about.
correct. The strategy is take cards from his first row so you can attack him directly.
Yeah.
And if you do that, most of the time in the first round, you hit that bell, game over. He already lost. Done.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens after you beat the trapper?
So what happens after you beat the trapper? The music goes really spooky, and even the lighting changes, and you get this strange map that you is totally different from the others. You literally see four options in front of you, and behind that is a cabin, and you're like, okay, I know a final boss area when I see one.
Yeah.
And you pick one of the last four options to this is your last chance to upgrade, do whatever you want with your cards.
Yeah.
And then you go to the cabin and the prospect changes, the board is gone, and it might take you a while to realize you can walk forward.
You are outside in the woods walking toward the cabin. It was one of those moments where I was just kind of like, "Oh, shit's really going sideways now." And again, I had no idea. I was scratching the surface at this point, but you get to walk toward the cabin, and as you're almost there, the opponent rises up out of the ground as a giant in front of the moon that is back behind the cabin, and he reaches out and hands you this board that has on it special abilities that you can then choose to use while you're fighting him. You have to like pass a test to take some of these, but when you do, these are things that can almost break the game in terms of giving you an advantage. They are that powerful. The first time I did it, I had I think the one ability to just draw twice, and I thought, okay, well that's pretty great. And then the second ability I got was because you can get two. The second one I got was to just choose the card from your deck that you want to draw, which is basically cheating, I
Broken.
think. But it's like,
Yes.
okay, great. Now I can just pick my favorite card out of here and try and beat him. Before we actually
Yeah.
start talking about this fight, should we talk about some of the best cards that we had in this first part?
It's Mantis God all the way
Oh
around.
yeah, yeah.
He attacks three ways, and that alone can be really powerful.
So like
So
he's got one health and one attack power, but the ability itself is what's really the huge advantage. So what had happened was, for me at least, like this is how I got here, was I ended up getting killed, and you get to make your own card. And the one that I made was a one cost, like a single sacrifice one, and it had the Mantis God 3 attack ability with it,
yeah,
but then it had a 3 power with it as well. So
so
that
you will
means
do
that
9
it
damage.
will do 9 damage as long as all 3 of those lanes are clear. But
Yeah,
even if they're not clear, it will probably kill whatever it is that's there. So
and we should have said this earlier. It takes 5 hit points if you're starting from the middle of the scale
Yeah.
to defeat an opponent.
Yeah. So just having just 2 of those hits will knock him out. And then like whatever you've got whatever damage is left over, you get in like a currency that lets you like buy other stuff and like buy new cards. But there's also the items, like we should also talk about the items that you can use along the way, because you know we were alluding to them being a little violent. He gives you over the course of the game, he gives you a pair of pliers and says you can add weight to the scale using this.
Now, if you were paying attention,
Yeah.
you would realize the things that he are weighing the scales with is gold teeth.
Yeah. Yeah. And he says,
well, guess what you're going to use when
he
you
says,
use those pliers?
I knew right away because he said the pain is temporary, but the advantage is good, or something like that. And
something like that.
So yeah. I was like, well, okay, so I know that I'm going to be pulling a tooth out to then drop onto the scale. So that's pretty horrible.
And the sound effect.
Oh, it's just so painful sounding. And my wife, when I said that, like, yeah, you should leave the room because I'm going to do this. She was like, what? And I said, yeah, I think this is going to happen.
To pull my teeth out.
So that adds like 1 point to the scale, and you still need like 4 more to win. But you can also add weight using another thing. So late in the escape room, you can find a dagger, and this dagger will also allow you to add weight to the scale. And I couldn't think like, oh wait, what is that? What is that going to do? Oh well, like, so in the last boss fight, I realized like, oh, I really need some weight on the scale, otherwise I'm going to lose right now. So I'll use that just as a last ditch effort. Your character takes the dagger and plucks their own eye out and puts it on the scale.
We should say, as graphic as this is, both times of these things are very, very quick.
But it is a shock because I was just like, oh my God, no way. Like, I can't believe that I did that. But then what's hilarious too is that after you do that, the entire right side of the screen is dark and you've got a blind spot. And so it's a lot harder to just,
too.
Yeah. And it's just harder to play it. And so I'm just like, God damn it. Like, what am I going to do now? And I was messaging you while I was in the middle of that fight, and you had said like, well, have you used the dagger yet? And I was like, well, yeah, I just did. I'm in the final fight. And I didn't know what was going to happen after this. If I was going to continue on through the rest of the entire game with this character, I had to ask, am I going to go through the whole goddamn game with just one eye? And you're like, no, let's just see what happens. Okay. So then you start this fight, by the way, and this is before I had pulled an eye out, but you start the fight and the space where your opponent sits is suddenly lit and you get to see him. And he's this old guy with like what looks like moss growing out of his beard. And there are like a couple of small mushrooms and you have to fight him. And I feel like part of the mystery starts to get like unraveled here, where suddenly you see like who you're fighting and it's just some old guy across the table. But you get to fight him. And his first round is just a bunch of cards that are kind of, they're kind of tough to fight. And then he's cycling through the special abilities that all the other 3 bosses had at random. And then once you beat him the first time, he says, well, we're going to play 3. Also, he started the fight by saying, we're going to have 3 rounds for myself. So he gives himself 3 candles while you still just have 1. And once you extinguish that first candle of his, the fight changes and he lays out all of the death cards that you have created over the course of playing the game.
Yes, ones that you have not picked up this round.
Yeah, all of those times that I had been trying to beat the game and thought, okay, well, I'll make the most powerful card I can to give myself an advantage the next time. Those are now coming back and biting me in the ass. And he's using them against me. And I thought, this jerk, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this. But you can use the cards that you have and try and take advantage of some of the items you might have left over, like the dagger that I did. And you can overcome his death cards that he's playing against you that you made and beat him in the second round. And what happens in this third round? Oh my God.
So, just for a little bit of a thing, it doesn't dawn on you, but for ambiance, he puts the literal moon behind him.
Yeah.
And he's stopped. He's like, I didn't think you would make it this far. So I got nothing planned. And he's like, wait a minute. He takes a picture of the moon, and the moon becomes a playing card, and it has 40 health, and you can't fly over it. I don't think you can fly over it.
No.
I could be wrong on that.
No, you can't.
It will do 1 damage to each of your cards, plus you, if you have no cards, per turn.
Yeah.
So it's a thing of endurance, and this is interesting because there's one mechanic we haven't talked about. What happens when you have no more cards?
You start
Or
to.
you can't draw any cards, I should say, because you could have them all in your hand.
Yeah.
But if you can't draw anymore, he'll lay down this thing called starvation. Starvation cannot be beaten or anything. And starvation gets a bit more powerful each turn you do not have a card.
I never ran into this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it lays down starvation, and then it'll lay down another starvation until it's all full. And if you have 4 starvation on the thing, you're probably going to lose.
Yeah. He lays them down in your playing field, like in your lane.
Well, he lays them down in his playing field. On the moon one, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I think he does lay them down in your field.
Okay.
So the last bit really is more of a match of endurance. Like, can you beat this massive behemoth and then do 5 damage to him?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not as hard as it sounds.
No.
But
no, especially if you've gotten this far with really good cards, you probably have a few good ones to use. But
yeah,
you beat him, and he gives you like this pile of what looks like just a pile of meat, and with a candle
pile of
in it.
Shit.
It very well could have been, yes, with a candle sticking out of it. And then there's a voice that you hear that just sounds like any random guy. Just says, "Oh, I just think I beat him." And then
there's
suddenly
not just a voice.
Suddenly
the
camera
screen changes.
The camera gets knocked over, as if like this game was being recorded on a video screen. And then like it goes black, like whatever camera was recording this broke, and the screen loads up a set of video files that you can watch. And suddenly like this is where like in Lost, where suddenly the hatch was opened and you're just like, what the hell is going on? What is down there? And this set of videos is from some guy who's a content creator. We don't get his name at this point. So at this point, I was just referring to him as Steve. But these videos are of him unwrapping card packs for a tabletop card games. And he opens one that is a vintage card game called Inscryption and finds latitude and longitude coordinates on them. And then in another video, he goes out, follows the coordinates and digs up a buried box that has a floppy disk in it. And it has the game Inscryption on it. And this is the point where you realize like, oh, we are Steve. We are playing this game right now. And that this is really odd.
What the fuck is that? Oh my god, you guys, I can't believe it. There's actually something here.
You can back out of the video menu screen and go back and just like continue playing the game, and the opponent just ends up like bringing you into that room again and killing you. But right before he does, you can pick up the camera and just pretend to take a picture of him. And he's like, well, you think that would do anything, whatever. If you at some point, and this is your clue that you kept hinting at, like you should use the dagger earlier. So if at any point during the game you've used the dagger and gouged...
That's not the final boss fight. That's key here.
Yeah. At any point, if you use the dagger and gouged out your eye, he will offer you, after the match is over, if you've won, he will offer you a replacement eye. Out of this box of like 10 different glass eyes, there's one that has a bunch of sigils on it. And if you stick that in, you suddenly get clues about what to do around the room, because you can see highlighted like lettering or marks wherever things should go. And you can end up finding this lost film canister. And if you have the canister of film and you've beaten him, you can put the film in the camera. And that is how you take down your opponent for good.
There is one giant thing we totally skipped on, and that is what happens at the very beginning, the first time you play this game.
Yeah.
You notice there is continue game, and then there is new game. New game, for whatever reason, is inaccessible. You cannot click on it. You must continue someone else's game, which is his name. You'll find this out very shortly.
Yeah.
And that flashing light that happens every time he takes you to this back room, you turn and it's the sigil for new game.
Yeah.
And you pick it up and you have to restart your game and new game is available. And when you do it, you get this old loading coding, like old school, as if you were playing an old disc game.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
What happens, you're playing a whole nother game out of nowhere.
Yeah. This is, it's almost like as if someone took the game that we were just playing and put it on the old Nintendo Entertainment System. And now this is Inscryption as if it was a demake down to being released in 1985. And you are now playing a very small Zelda-like RPG with card battling. So
yeah,
the game now opens up, and this is a new game that we are playing called Inscryption. There is a land that you are traversing and exploring. There are 4 scribes that have created these cards, and they are Gamora, Leshy, P03, and Magnificus. Gamora is the scribe of the dead. She creates her cards by inscribing the epitaphs on the dead of the dead with her quill, and her cards are based on bones, and they cost bones to play. So I'm going to read through all of them just to give you an idea of what they are. And then, so that's Gamora. There's Leshy, who you were just fighting. He is the scribe of beasts. He creates his cards by taking pictures of animals with his wildlife camera. Cards costs are based on sacrificing other cards. There's P03. He's the scribe of technology. He creates his cards by copying the CPUs of robots with its particle scanner. Card costs are based on energy buildup. And finally, there's Magnificus. He's the scribe of magics. He creates his cards by painting his wizard pupils with his brush. He paints portraits, and those turned into cards. Card costs are based on gem cards that must be played on the board. So we now have not one, but 4 different card types and card economies to learn and figure out. This is like the game, while it looked like it became a lot simpler, it became much more complex because these cards can then get mixed and matched between them. They can get they can power up other cards that are a different type. There's so much more happening now, or that can happen in the game. And this is where like the complexity just really unfolds.
Yeah, and this really does play out less like a mystery part, and that's by design, because the more you play this, the more you realize this was the original product, and it makes you wonder what happened.
Yeah.
Like what happened to like the point where what I was playing before, what made it turn into that? And the funny thing is, the more you play around this area, the more you recognize people. The first thing you'll recognize in Leshy's area, those bosses you face are actual characters.
Yeah.
And you fight against them, and they're much more simpler in this version. This part is actually not a roguelike, I should say that. You keep whatever cards you have and you just build a deck.
Right.
And you're already familiar with two of these playstyles. You're familiar with Bones and you're familiar with Beast.
Yeah.
The electronic and the magic take some getting used to, especially the magic. The magic is weird. And it's the one I chose to play, and I kind of regretted it. Turns out Electric and Bones are kind of the real OPs of this miniature game.
Yeah. Yeah.
How Electric works is you start off with 1 electricity per game, and it raises per round to a max of 6, I think, or 5. 6 or 5. And that is your currency for Electric. But I won't get into magic or anything like that. But
I did the same. So like I started with magic because I thought like, oh, it's a new deck, it's a new type, let's learn this. And it was like the most complex of the 4 different card types to learn, because you have to like figure out what cards you need for your deck, and there are like 3 different gem colors that you have to play. And like each card only is playable with one specific gem color. So you might draw one, like a green gem, but your cards need a red gem to play. So you're like, well, crap, what am I going to do with this? And you can't do anything. So then you really have to figure out how to build your deck. The minimum you can have is 20 cards, but like you might not have cards that really match up the strategy that you want to try and use. You also can like gain new cards in this area, in this land, by exploring and fighting other characters, but you gain them at random. And so you might just
they're like card packs.
Yeah. You might just have really bad luck just getting new cards. And so like you can go to like, the bridge builder and talk to her, and she says that like, hey, you could have this card pack and see if that helps. And so you're like, oh, thanks, Rebecca. We'll see what I get. And you get like 2 magic cards that you can't use because you don't know how these work. And then a couple other, like 1 technology card it might be like your only tech card. And because of that, you can't really like find a way to fit it well into your game or into your deck. And so it's really hard to use. And I decided like, well, I wonder if I could just restart this, because I'm not having a great time with this deck. And I just need better cards. I need different cards. So I restarted the game, and you can walk around this world and you can talk to the characters again. And I ran into the bridge builder Rebecca again. This was like a great 4th wall breaking moment where she says that like, I get it. You want to try out some different cards, but remember, when you reset the game, I have to start over too, because she's building the bridge. And that I got to that.
I've never done that.
I got to that and I laughed really hard. Enough that like my wife came into the room and was like, what? And I had to explain to her, and she didn't think it was that funny, but just the idea of like these characters are sentient of your actions and the game that they are in is something that is kind of telling for the rest of the game. You can also meet up with some of the other characters, like the fur trader from the first part of the game. She is just like off in a secret area that you might not even find. She says something about, I know that this game has been like redone or reset, but the old data is still here. And it is something that we can never get rid of. She knows something is amiss. Something is going on that, is somewhat sinister, but we never really get an idea of what that is until much later. So you fight the 4 scribes. Which scribe did you go after first?
I think I went after Gamora first.
Yeah.
Because you can only pick between Leshy or Gamora starting out.
Yeah. And when you fight Gamora, her cards are based on bones, and she ends up having cards that can be resurrected, and they return to her hand after they're killed, and she plays them again 2 turns later. So, like, each of these scribes have some odd superpower that is not that difficult to face, but it's still interesting, and it changes the way you fight. I think the first one I went after was Leshy, the scribe of beasts, and in his fight, he just replaces your hand with amalgam cards after you beat him the first time. So those amalgam cards are just a bunch of cards that have no abilities. And it's kind of like, well, I guess, I got to try and pull better cards from the ones that I didn't have after I beat him the first time. After you beat 2 scribes, there's a message that pops up on screen that the memory is full, and whoever is recording this has to like change out the memory card, and that means we get another set of videos to watch. Steve's name is actually Luke Carter. He is also known online as the Lucky Carter. That's his persona, and he does a lot of videos about opening cards for playing card games. He's been unable to find any information online about an Inscryption computer game, but he's reached out to the company that made the card game, and they send someone to his house to investigate it, or so we think.
I think this woman's actually from Game Funa. She came to my door yesterday, and I didn't answer. This time I'm going to record it. Hi!
Hi there! I'm floppy disk for a game called Inscryption. I was told you came by a copy of it somehow. Sound familiar?
No.
No?
No, I don't know anything about that.
Really?
Inscryption, you said?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Really? Because, apparently you emailed us about it. You are, Luke Carter, right?
Oh.
You know the luckycarter@gmail.com?
Yeah, you know what? That's, I am Luke Carter, but that's not my email address.
Really? Because, I just noticed because I've seen your videos.
Oh.
I'm a big fan.
Well, thanks for watching. Listen, how'd you know where I live, exactly?
My boss gave me your address.
And how did you get past the side gate? It's locked.
Okay, Luke. I'm going to give you my business card. And if you remember anything at all, feel free to give me a call. Okay?
Will do. Take care. What the fuck?
This was like a video that was I was kind of creeped out by because this woman comes to the door. He records their interaction, and she like asks him like, did you contact us about this kind of thing? And he's just trying to play dumb and say no. But the whole time I was watching this, I thought she stuck her foot in the door so he can't slam the door in her face if he has to. And that I found was really creepy.
Oh, and he specifically says, you had to jump over my gate to come here.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like he lives in a place that like doesn't have a front door. He lives in like someone's mother-in-law apartment at the back of a house. At this point, I thought this is getting very like Black Mirror, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits kind of like level of a weird. That set of videos just kind of leaves us with this mystery of like, what really is on this disc that he has, and what really is it that we're playing? Because they are willing to send somebody to a house to try and investigate this, and it's like a little weird and kind of like it creeped me out.
Yeah, the only thing is I'm kind of surprised you were creeped out because the premise itself is scary.
Yeah.
The acting is bad. Like, I don't want to dump on this woman, but she's very stiff and like her acting's very wooden. It's like they literally went, Sarah from accounting, we need you for a minute. Yeah, can you put on these glasses and coats and say these lines? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
It's possible there might be a reason for that, but we'll just leave it at that. So after you beat 2 scribes, Rebecca finishes building the bridge and she moves over to a dock near Leshy's cabin and just hangs out there. You can go talk to her and she will give you information about some of the characters in the game, and she will talk about the scribes especially. She points out that Leshy is the scribe of beasts. He's crazy. Grimora of the undead thinks that you want to kill her and take over as a new scribe of the undead. Magnificus is the one for magic. He's a fine teacher. He's kind of mysterious. But she says P03, the tech scribe, he's the worst. He wants something worse than Leshy. But that's all she says. And you kind of have to just take it as it is. So, whatever's going on, there is something worse than what was happening in the first act of this game. I think like this would also be a good point to talk a little bit about what you were theorizing the first time you played it. Like, did you have any like weird conspiracy theories halfway through this game or what?
So my train of thought wasn't so much guessing what was going on, because everything was so weird at this point that I kind of was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to sit back and actually enjoy the ride. Because once when you get to the videos, at that point I was like, okay, all bets are off on whatever the hell's going on. However, we did mention that some of the cards in the first part talk.
Yeah.
But only 3 do. And they also change. The stoat's like the first thing you talk to.
Yeah.
And it looks like a stoat.
But then
every
at one
time
point
you lose, it doesn't look like a stoat anymore. It has this weird boxy square head.
Yeah.
And the stink bug no longer looks like a stink bug. And I never got to the point where like what this wolf with one eye later looks into, but
he just starts to get more and more furry looking.
Yeah. And when you're playing in this part of the game, you quickly realize, hey, wait a minute. These 3 other scribes, those were the talking cards.
Yeah. Yeah, they were turned into cards.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, what the hell's going on? And you get warning, like you said, you get warning that something else is afoot.
Something is afoot, yeah.
And unless she talks about like, he just wanted everyone to enjoy nature. I wanted everyone to be like a freaking stoat. Isn't that just so honorable to live as a beast and nothing more? And
yeah.
Apparently 3 scribes didn't like that.
Yeah. There's other stuff to discover here, like other weird things. There's a secret area in Grimora's crypt that you can like dig down into. You can like explore, and then there is a hidden wall that you can walk through. That like the screen that you're walking around in is just black, and if you happen to walk in the right direction at the right angle, you walk through the screen up to another screen that has a giant skeleton demon on it, and you can talk to it, and it just says something about the old data again, just like the trader. She like this demon says something, and then you overhear Luke's voice say, "What the fuck?" And
yeah,
it's very strange to just think like, oh, like we are watching Luke play this game right now. Like this is what we're experiencing. So every time something gets answered, there are like 5 questions that are created because of that.
Yeah, and we won't go through like what the other areas are like. Everyone's area is super small. The only complaint I have is when you go through PO3's era, there are these puzzles that make no freaking sense that you got to progress through.
Oh, I was so annoyed with those. Yeah.
I had to look up a guide for the last 2. And we won't even try to explain them. They have to do something with adding and subtracting numbers in a way that is very obtuse.
Yeah.
But the this portion of the game is very, very simple for the most part. There are secrets to be found, but not very many.
Yeah.
And one of the secrets will transfer over to the next thing. But after you beat all the scribes, you go back to the starting area and something interesting happens.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I did want to ask you about some specific card combinations that you found in this act of the game.
I can't honestly remember.
You can't remember like any specific ones?
No,
Okay.
I remember using types more than anything.
Yeah.
I remember using electrical and bones on my second playthroughs a lot. And I remember those were way better than Wizard. Wizard can be good once when you figure it out, but it takes so much work that I didn't think it was worth it.
There are a couple of different combinations that I do want to address because these card combinations, you said earlier that the game wants you to take advantage of it and take advantage of your cards and find a way to win with that. But these particular combinations are busted. Like these break the game. So I before I was going to move on from this like chapter, I thought like, well, there's a training dummy in the magic area. I can use that to try and get this one particular PlayStation trophy that says to try like to do 666 damage. Like do an immense amount of damage that is unnecessary to win the game. But
I do remember that.
I looked up the combination for this card, like what you should do, and there are two strategies. And so I was like, well, okay, I'll go after this one that uses Ouroboros, that particular card. So you have to take Pharaoh's Pets, that's one card, and that will let you place Ouroboros on the board and then sacrifice Ouroboros and Pharaoh's Pets. But when Ouroboros dies, he returns to your hand with 1 extra power and 1 extra health. So I started doing that, threw on a podcast, and just repeated that over and over and over. And after about maybe like 20 minutes, I just got bored and saw that Ouroboros was up to 125 in health and in damage. And I was like, well, okay, this card's totally broken, but I don't want to have to sit here for another hour to continuously powering this thing up. So
the other way is faster. It only takes about 20 minutes.
So I did go to the other way, and the energy conduits will let you put down an energy conduit on each end of the board, and then you have a green gem and a stim mage, which lets you buy power for the stim mage using your energy, but these special energy conduits will let you have unlimited energy. So then you just sit there for a few minutes and tap away at the triangle button until your stim mage reaches 666 power, and then you just hit the training dummy once and get the trophy.
I literally went to the bathroom while doing this achievement.
Because you just keep hitting the triangle button. You don't even have to watch.
I still had more to go by the time I was done.
So then like you have that done and like keep running around, maybe keep going through fights. I got into another fight against, I think it was either Magnificus or PO3, and I got Ouroboros back in my hand, and it still said 125 on both the health and damage.
Yeah, you have a broken card at that point.
I have a broken card for the rest of this game. And it is pretty much just like, if you get this in your hand, it's a win card. Doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. That's it. The game is over. So now you're just kind of like, well, all right, let's see if I can last until I pull that card. And how can I engineer my deck to make it so I can just outlast the opponent until this card comes up? So that's a particularly like broken combination that doesn't just break the card for the rest of that match. It breaks it for the rest of the entire game.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Did you have it turn against you in PO3's boss fight with the conveyor belt?
No. So yes,
Okay.
PO3's boss fight I thought was actually really cool because this conveyor belt will make it
I thought his was the best.
Yeah. because the conveyor belt will make it so you have to be mindful of not playing cards on the far left slot, because then those cards will go up to his side and turn against you. Any cards that he plays over on the far right will come to you. So I tried not to kill cards on the far right, tried to avoid playing cards on the far left, and then I realized, like, oh, it doesn't matter because I've got the Ouroboros and it's over. That's it.
Done.
Magnificence's his boss fight was interesting because he erases.
His is so annoying.
But like I thought this was like a really fun puzzle to solve because he
is.
erases the sigils in all of your cards so they don't have special abilities, and then he replaces them with new ones. So then I like fought him once and I thought, like, well, wait a second, I need really shitty cards. I need ones that cost 1 or cost nothing, and then every time I get them in hand or play them, he's just going to be like, oh, well, let's add a sigil to this card, and now these cards that are either going to die after they attack once, like the skeletons, or are just like, you know, really simple like gem cards, suddenly they now have a special ability and can attack. So I thought this was like a kind of a brilliant way to rethink, like force you to rethink how you build your deck.
That's a great strategy. I can't remember how I beat him. I just remember I was super frustrated and glad he was over all 3 times.
Did you see in P03's level in his factory? Did you see one of the robots dredge up something that looked like a glitch and put it on the conveyor belt?
Yeah, that was cool. I waited until it went at the end of the conveyor belt, even though it did nothing.
Yeah, I followed it all the way through the entire factory and watched it go like through processing, get turned into what should be a card. And it goes all the way through, gets scanned by him, and it's like, well, I thought I was going to get something cool if I tried to like pick it up or interact with it along the way on the conveyor belt, and at no point it lets you do that. But it's just one of those little Easter eggs that comes back around, because after you defeat all 4 of the scribes, you get back to the starting area where their headstones are, and they let you choose which one you want to fight and replace. Who did you think you were going to replace?
I was going to replace the wizard.
Yeah. Cool. I said, like, well, I guess I'll replace Gamora because she expects it. She wants me to, right? And so I said, like, cool, I'll replace Gamora. I'll be the Scribe of the Dead. And also I thought, like, I know the bone decks the best, so I think I should go with that. Like, whatever's going to happen, I think I'll need those. But
that's not what happens.
P03 intervenes and challenges you. I do kind of wonder what the dialogue would have been like if you had just challenged him anyways. Probably nothing would have happened.
In one of the playthroughs, I did do that, and I remember it wasn't remarkable.
Okay.
I can't remember what it said exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't giant. I think there was a slight nod to it, but it wasn't super interesting or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you fight him, and fun boss fight.
Yeah. Halfway through the fight, though, he plays the glitch card that he made in his factory, and it seems to break the game. But it's not broken. It's actually just how P03 takes over, just like Leshy did. At this point, it comes back into first-person perspective. Like, it's kind of in the same style of game that the first part was in with Leshy, but now...
I would say it's a little cleaner.
Yeah, it is. Because now you're playing against P03 across the table, and he lays out a board with not 4 lanes of cards to play in, but 5. And this was like a change that was like, oh no, here we go. This is monumental. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah. It's a little reminiscent of a saw trap. You can't move this time.
You can't.
You're like,
you
can right off the bat?
Not right off the bat, because you try and
Okay.
get up and your character looks
Yeah.
down at their left hand and it's strapped to
And
the
it's-
table.
Yeah.
The theme of this are like robots. There are robot themed cards that are printed on floppy disks, and those are the cards that you play.
It's energy all the way this
Yeah.
time. And they play on floppy disk, and there's an extra row. So instead of 4, there are 5.
Right. And now like card play is based on your energy, so you should have like tried to learn that as best as possible during the last act, when you had all those options for cards. But now you kind of have to just like really, it forces you really to know how the energy economy works when you're playing this game. There's a holographic screen display that is on the table, that's like projected onto the table, and that's how you see your character. And you're moving around this world similar to the first game that Leshy was having you play, but it's not randomly generated. And you just move from screen to screen display, like in the very first Zelda game, but you're not moving around on the screen. You're just kind of like choosing the space that you're going to. And I didn't realize this until like after I like explored enough of the game, but this is the same world structure as the original Inscryption from Act 2.
The funny thing is,
yeah,
I played this 3 times, and I didn't realize that till that video you literally sent me yesterday.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah,
It
because
went
like
over my head, and it's amazing that there are things even I missed, and I platinumed the game.
wow, yeah, because like you've got like the one beast type cards up in the northeast. You've got the dead cards that are they're just like zombie themed robots, but they're down in the southeast where the crypt was. There's the magic land, which is down in the southwest, and the factory area, which is up in the northwest. But you don't really get to see that. You don't have a game map. You just have to remember, like, this is like how the map was laid out in that last game. This is what it looks like now. And this is, instead of it being Leshy's vision of what Inscryption would be, this is P03's vision of what Inscryption is.
So you kind of laid out how this version's played. And it's, again, less roguelike. You keep your cards this time. Even if you die, when you die, you get just sent back to a checkpoint. And you might lose the cards you got in between the checkpoint and when you lost, but other than that, you keep your deck.
Well, you keep your deck, but there's currency that you use to buy new cards or power up your cards. And that currency, it is just like coins that you get, from beating and doing over damage to your fights.
Excess damage.
Yeah, excess damage. And you drop that where you die. And you have to try and make it back to that point to get it back. So it is very, very light Souls-like style kind of thing. But
yeah,
as far as like it being difficult, it's not really that hard. At least I didn't find it that hard to do. But still, like, it's kind of that thing of like, oh, you got to remember where you were, so then you can try and get back there and get your money back.
There are 3 main mechanics about this area that are very different. One is you get these 1 matches that you got to do a certain amount of damage before a certain amount of turns. Otherwise, you lose that round and you die and you go back to the checkpoint.
Yeah.
The third one is the bosses themselves, and we'll go over them bit by bit. And then the third one, really cool, you get these bounties on you.
Yeah. So you've got like bounty hunter robots coming after you, and it's like in Grand Theft Auto where like you get 1 star and then you can get 2 stars after another fight, and you get more powerful enemies coming after you, and then 3 stars. And these enemies show up in the battles as rogue cards that are super powerful. It's pretty funny how like they show up and they have like an introductory speech where they say like, I'm gonna like tear you a new one, or like I'm gonna like kill you, and then I'm gonna go start my own diner somewhere in a small town or something. It's funny, like
usually really funny kind of Western quips because they're all looking like cowboys.
Yeah. Well, they have to. They're bounty hunters.
I think they make the game, this part of the game, very interesting because they can just show up out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
if you get a really tough one, it can really fuck up your game. But
Yeah.
it feels so satisfying when you beat them.
Yeah. They also have like a speech at the end if they get killed, so it's pretty funny. Because you're strapped to the table, you're kind of in the same situation as you were in the beginning of the very beginning of the game. And then after you've completed a couple of fights, P03 tells you to get up and go get something from another room. And you actually are allowed to get up from the table and go explore the area around you. It's now just not one single room like in Leshy's cabin. It is a factory with a few rooms and like some other puzzles to solve.
Yeah, it's not that much bigger, I would say. The only thing that really sticks out at first is you're like, oh, it's that cuckoo clock again, just slightly different.
Yeah.
Somehow not digital. And you get the thing. I think there's like a couple of puzzles you can solve for extra things as well.
Yeah.
For extra items. And items are totally different in this version. Like one will totally screen wipe both boards, which can harm you, but also harms them. I can't remember much of what else. One gives you an extra energy.
There's another one that adds shielding to all of the cards that are in play.
That's right.
Yeah, all of your cards, that is. Not all cards, but just your cards. You mentioned the cuckoo clock. And you can go over, and if you remember the times that were important from Leshy's thing, what you could do is just change the hands on the clock to try and match those. So if you change the hands back to 11 o'clock again, the bird pops out and you get something to use. Like it's a new card. That's great. You could also rearrange the hands to other locations. Just by accident, I switched it because I was on the way trying to move the hands to 11 o'clock. I moved the hands to 4 o'clock on the way. And out pops from the cuckoo clock Ouroboros. And now it is the Aurora Bot. It is pretty much the same card from the second act of the game. And I thought to myself,
oh, that's right. So you have this.
I looked at it. I looked at it and it's like, okay, well, this is the Aurora Bot, like 5 health, 5 power card. So that's pretty good. I think I'll try and use that. And then I asked, why does it have the number 12 above those? Oh my God. It's 125 still. It's the game could not fit the entire number of those in its own like display. And so like it had to like wrap around to the top. And I was just like, oh my God, it's the win card. I got it by accident. Down the line,
I was wondering.
You're supposed to get this card at like near the end of the game, and I just accidentally stumbled upon it. And also, the damage and health have carried over from my failed attempt at trying to get the 666 damage way back earlier. And now I've just got this busted card again, carried over from Act 2 to Act 3.
That makes a lot of sense, because it seemed like you were struggling with Act 1 and Act 2. And then with Act 3, you're like done in 2 days. And I was like,
yeah,
how did he do that so fast?
Oh, and
now I know. You got a cheat card.
I did. And then I said like, oh, this card is busted already. I wonder if I can break it even more. Because you have to remember, like, this is how the game works. When you play this card down and it does damage and it does over damage, meaning it does more than enough to tip the scale for you to win, you get whatever's left over in terms of damage as currency. That means when I win, I get probably
you just maxed out the currency.
I get $100. I get $100 every time I win, and the things in the shops cost like $8.
Like they're not expensive.
$20 at most. So I immediately like just was like, okay, well, I'm gonna start fighting, and if I can use this card, I'm using it. That's it. And then, like, I get $100 for winning. That's great. Go to the shops, and one of the items that you can buy is something that adds special powers to whatever cards you want. And the special powers that are available are like 3 to choose from each time, and they're random. So sometimes you might have one that resurrects when a card dies, it goes back to your hand, or it's like a sniper bot, so it lets you like choose which lane to shoot at every time. I just went in there and I said, I'm going to break the Aurora bot even more. I added I think it already had the resurrect ability to it. So every time it died, it just came back to your hand. I added the sniper ability to it. So it didn't matter where I played it.
Shoot wherever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't matter where I played it. It just shot an open space and I won whatever match it didn't matter. The matches did not matter now. And then I gave it the double gunner. So now it shoots twice. So it's like, okay, well, whatever it is, I'm going to shoot that open space twice and the game's over. Or maybe I'll shoot this one bot that's really annoying and then the game's over because it's going to shoot a second time in the same spot. Because shooting something with 125 damage, there's no way it's going to survive.
No.
So I did that. And then I kept getting more and more money that I just started throwing sigils onto other cards that I had and getting myself more broken cards. Like the double gunner, I gave it like a double strike and the sniper ability. So now instead of it shooting in 2 different directions and it not shooting straight in front of itself, I made it so it could shoot in front of itself. And, it could defend itself really well. There were others that's kind of like, oh, this one has a shield, so it doesn't matter how much damage it takes on that first hit. It doesn't take any damage. I really felt like I cheated the game and made it super easy for myself. At the same time, I just felt hilarious doing it.
It's one of those self-rewarding things, but did any of the bosses give you trouble because of their weird mechanics? I could imagine one did.
They were like puzzles, but really no. I didn't have a terrible time. Like I would fight them and maybe like I'd lose like 1 or 2 times just because I didn't know what was going to happen. But when you lose, you just go back to the start of the fight and that's it.
Yeah.
Which one did you go for first?
I can't remember which one I went for first, but there is one that definitely sticks out, and I hinted at it earlier.
Okay, so the one that I went for first was down in the southeast. It was Gormora's Crypt, and that was the librarian, or it's called the archivist. And this one sends out a bunch of librarian cards. They're enemy cards that have some good power on them, but when you kill them, the game has you choose a file from the hard drive, and the bigger the file it is, the more damage you do to the boss. And
so this
is the one that you were trying to warn about earlier, right?
Yeah, it will literally show that file on screen, whatever it is. And
so if
it'll measure the kilobytes and gigabytes on it and give it a certain power based on that. I can't remember what it is exactly, but just the bigger the file, the beefier the attack.
Yeah, the more damage. So if you're playing this on PC, it reads your own files, which is
specifically your own PC,
which is very creepy. Like it reads your own files on your PC, and it's not malware, it's not spyware, but it's a game that is reading your information. And yes, as you alluded to, if you have something slightly lewd or that you want to keep secret from somebody, maybe not play this game. So
or stream it.
So
I mean, you can play it just fine.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, when it turns your card into a file, if you lose that file, it'll delete that file.
Yeah. Like it says that, like, we are going to,
for real,
we are going to sacrifice one of your files, choose one to sacrifice or to use. And then once you play that card that has, originally been one of your files, it says, if you lose this card, we will delete this. And that technically, yes, is considered malware. Because
now, I think they changed it where it'll just go in your recycling bin and not just straight up delete.
Okay.
Because
I've also read that it will create another file with that same name and then pretend to delete it, or say like, oh, I wasn't able to delete this. Please delete it when you have the chance. And then
I never
it'll ask
lost
you to.
my file, so I'm not fully sure what happened. So I had to look it up.
Yeah.
And I think, and I could be wrong, but people legit complained, "Where's my file?" at one point.
Yeah. So there's that. There's the photographer who is in Leshy's forest area. They have cards that transform into beasts. So it's like they go into beast mode. His boss fight is where you can take a picture of the board, which will then revert the state of it to before your cards were killed or before when he played a bunch of enemy cards. And that's how you just wipe the board clean of anything problematic, or you restore the cards that he killed. That was a mechanic that I was like, this is really cool.
It was cool. It was also a little confusing, but I got through for it each time, no problem.
Yeah.
It's one of those, you got to experience it to like understand fully what we're talking about on that one, I would say.
It's kind of like, okay, well, like you have this special ability that just lets you turn time back. And you just have to remember like, okay, what's a good point that I want to revert to if things go sideways? And I should take a picture of the board right now so that I can save it for later. Then there's the unfinished boss in Magnificent's Tower. That's the magic one. It has you choose the rules for this match.
This is the hardest boss in the game.
Yeah. I felt like this is the one that gave me the most trouble, where you kind of have to keep in mind, like, okay, what am I going to deal with in terms of these rules? And you have to pick and choose them on the fly. So like, one of them, for an example, is like every time you play a card, his cards get armored, or all cards lose one health.
Yeah.
So,
and this stacks in ridiculous ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
In ways that you can't see coming.
There's one, because like they have two parts that you choose independently, but there's one option that just says you lose. And so like you could accidentally choose that from one, like whatever ridiculous reason. And so like the rule is just when you start a turn, you lose. And it's like, well, why? What's the point of this? So that's just one hilarious trap that is there for you to accidentally step in. But then the last one is Golly, and she is in P03's factory. She connects online and pulls avatars and names from your friends list to use as cards. An example was like one card that she had played was called Anthony 86, and it had his picture from like my friends list on there. So it was a card that was called Anthony 86, and it had a picture of John Marston from Red Dead Redemption, like coming at me and fighting against me. That was pretty weird. Was there anything notable on PC or different on PC?
I can't remember on PC, but I specifically 3 or 4 times it would not connect to the internet properly on console.
Huh.
And I had to restart this fight.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Does it just like force you to restart if it can't connect?
It just says waiting forever.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah. And I was getting really fed up by the 4th time, but it finally connected, gave me something to beat, and I was able to finish it. And it was bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Huh.
So something to look. Yeah, there might be a guide or something that will help you with this if you run into that problem.
Okay. So after you beat just one of those bosses, you get a third video set when like the battery dies in the camera and Luke has to change it out.
This is where things get weird.
Yeah.
Again.
So
again.
So like the first video, that is of note is of him in his car. He just bought the card pack that had the coordinates on it. So this is happening before he opened it up. Then another one shows him calling the woman that he bought the cards from and asking to speak with her daughter who had those cards because he wanted to learn more about this disc and the game that was on it. She explains that her daughter, Casey, had died a long time ago.
And Casey's a name that kept popping up throughout the game.
Yeah. Like her name is on one of the gravestones in Grimora's crypt. It's also seen.
It's an original death card in the first area.
Yeah. It's creepy because also some of the other videos show Luke researching Casey's death, and it sounds like he's starting to get haunted by something. But then that video of him at night is really creepy because he's like laying in bed and he says someone's in his house.
Yeah, he's under the covers and he's like, someone is in my house. And you can hear it in the background.
Yeah. And he says that his phone is in the kitchen and he doesn't have any way to like call police or anything.
Someone is here. Fuck this. My phone's in the other room, so if I die before I can call 911, use this tape as evidence.
There is one last video in that set that looks like it's corrupted, but for about a split second, you see a piece of paper with a line of code on it. And within that line of code, there are other words like mycologist and blood and like that. They're like strings of numbers and stuff. That's a cipher for something else that we could talk about later. But
this part, I warned you on like, hey man, if there is anything you feel like you need to write down, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because I screenshot this the first time thinking this will be a puzzle in the game. And I'm so glad it wasn't. I'm so glad this was an extra thing because this seemed really cryptic as hell.
Yeah. I took out my phone and I screenshotted it anyways, but we'll save that for very later. But as long as we are going right now, there's a lot to cover. So like you've beaten these 4 and you start to make your way back to the starting area, just like you did in the previous version. And before you do, P03 says, oh no, a security camera is out. Can you go fix it? So he asks you to get up and go to another room in the factory and go fix this security camera. To get there, you have had to solve a few puzzles that are pretty much CAPTCHA tests like you have on websites. And so like you have to prove that you're not a robot by like saying like, okay, well, what numbers are in this screen? And you have to type them in. There's others that are like, point out all the stoplights. And it made me laugh a little bit. But you get to the last one and solve that. The floor drops out from under you slowly like it's an elevator. And you go down into the basement where the other 3 scribes are hanging out. It's Grimora, Leshy, and Magnificus, just like hiding out in the basement of this factory. And they tell you P03 needs to be stopped. And we have to distract him. So you keep playing and we will take care of him. This moment, I was just kind of like, oh shit, it's going down. But like you get back to the table, you keep playing with P03 and he tells you that you think you've won, but I've actually been using you to upload myself as Inscryption to the internet. And all the Uber bots, the bosses that you've been fighting, have been tools to help me build this online version of Inscryption. Like the archivist was reading the files off your computer to then like build a file base. The photographer was using the screenshots that you took during the boss fight to create the store page. And then you helped me connect online by using Golly and golly, that boss fight just allowed me to connect and pull information. And now I'm going to upload myself into the web and I'm going to live forever as Inscryption online.
Yeah, and that was kind of a weird thing because the big part is like, isn't that right, Luke? And the dude hacks into the dude's webcam
Yeah.
and puts his face in the moment, in the
Yeah.
freaking moment on screen. And he is like,
He's like, shit, oh no.
yeah. And just when everything is about to go awry,
Yeah.
Leshy just grabs him from behind and like pulls his head off.
Yeah. Like you just see Leshy's hands come out from the dark behind P03 and he just tears the head off. And it was like, whoa, that was okay. Thanks, dude. Like we just had one villain just take out another. That's great. Then the three scribes stand around, they talk for a minute to try and figure out what's going to happen next. And Grimora takes out the hammer that you use to destroy cards on the table if you need to, and takes the file that is Inscryption and hits it with the destruction hammer, which pretty much deletes the entire game.
Yeah. This is the first time I played this part. I literally went, "We doing this again?" Because what happens is Grimora's area loads up, and you're just like, I'm enjoying this game, but I kind of want it to end. But you find out quickly, oh, it's actually doing that.
Yeah, because like over in the corner, there's a progress bar that shows the deletion of everything, of all the files. And so you play one last round, you play one single round with Grimora, who has her own card deck and her own style of layout. So I imagine that it could be planned that you could have the Grimora's campaign as DLC, but in this case, it was just one single match that has its own aesthetic.
Someone's actually made a mod where you can play a full version of that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But on Steam, of course.
Yeah. And like her board layout it's not like a scroll like Leshy had or like a hologram like P03 had. Hers is like a chessboard, and you have pieces that move around the board, and if they bump into each other, that's when a fight starts. You have that match, and then it doesn't matter who wins or loses. You just shake hands and have it over. And then you
it
have
goes super quickly.
Yeah. You have then you have a match with Leshy. And this one was kind of heartfelt because it felt like you were like the closest with him. But you have a match against him, and I lost that match. And then he said, let's not keep score. Let's just keep playing and enjoy the time together. That was really heartfelt. I really, that hit me pretty well. I loved that.
It felt like you were talking to someone on their sick bed.
Yeah.
On their bed.
Said like, you know what? To hell with who wins and who loses. Let's just enjoy it. So then as you're playing, you start to see stuff get deleted and just disappear from the board. And after almost everything's gone, it kind of just forces you to stop playing. And so you're not playing your cards anymore. You're just kind of staring at an empty table. And he reaches across the screen with one hand, and you shake his hand, and that's it. So then, you've played against two of the remaining scribes. Magnificus is the only one left. And you play against him, and his board or his state is like the most outlandish, where you've got like this slab of stone that you can like pull your cards from. When you play a card out, it creates an entire character model of a wizard or a crystal or whatever it is that you played out. And they have...
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what this is referencing?
I heard it on one of the videos I sent you.
This is referencing a Yu-Gi-Oh battle.
Okay.
So, in case of you don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it literally was, what if card games sort of came to life? And,
cool.
This is 100% a Yu-Gi-Oh! Battle, because they use this same thing to play their cards on, like they do in the TV show on one season.
Okay.
And your cards come to life that way. And then slowly, bit by bit, and this one takes way too long in my opinion, but everything does delete, and It's the trippiest deletion in the game. They saved the weirdest one for last.
Yeah. It's also one of the saddest because in Magnificus is constantly saying that he's not ready to die. I don't want to go. And he's at the very end desperate after everything starts to disappear. He's desperate to just reach out and shake your hand, and he's too slow to do it. And
yeah, he's the only one you don't do it with, other than P03.
Yeah, but he just like falls down dead and then disappears, and it's kind of like, well, like I wish he had like come to this conclusion sooner and actually wanted to like embrace the end. After all that's gone, you then have a white screen, and I waited for a second and then realized like, well, what if I do anything? And when I moved the joystick, my character from the original Inscryption came back on screen, and then you could move around. You go to another screen, and the trader is there again, and she's the wood carver who was giving you wood carvings in the first act against Leshy. And she says, everything's almost gone. There's only the old data that's left. And I would urge you not to look at it. But you are not
the only thing to do.
You are not going to heed my warnings. And I know you'll look. And so, you're like, okay, cool. Like, whatever it is, how bad can it be? Or like, what is it? And so you can go to another screen and have your character go look at this glitchy icon, and whatever it is like some sort of like file bank that pops up on screen, and then a bunch of like messages that say redacted on it. And then you hear screaming, and you then get a glitchy looking video of Luke trying to smash the game disc with a hammer.
Yeah.
And this video ends with like someone knocks on his door. He goes to answer the door and yell at whoever's there. The door flies open, and it's Amanda. She shoots him in the head and then goes in and takes the disc and leaves. And the last thing you see is Luke's like dead body on the floor, bleeding out. That's how the game ends.
Yep. Rolls credits.
What? Ending as the rest of it is just with a what the fuck moment. Like such a shock and a way to end like this game that had like a very moving ending to it just suddenly takes a turn and now ends with more questions.
Like I said, it rolls credits and you are just left there like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Okay.
What were your thoughts on like when that happened?
It's like I guess like the company needed that disc back to cover this up, and that's it. Like they just needed this back, so they sent that agent back to the house to take it. And at first I thought like, oh wait a second, going back to like other what the fuck moments like in this game, there was one where you find a file during P03's chapter, and this file has messages on it. And it's a picture of Casey. And she said like, oh, like this is me with my best friend when we went to the card gaming convention. Here we are. Like we had such a great time. And the person that she's with looks like Luke. And so at that moment, I messaged you and said like, what the hell is going on? Because this guy looks like Luke. Like, what is this? And then like you'd said like, well, this game pulls pictures from your hard drive. So it's going to like look like whoever is on your computer and make you think that you are the one that knew Casey. But also like the character that is at the end, I thought looked like Casey in the picture. And so I thought like, did Casey just show up at Luke's house and kill him and then take the disc? But no, that character's name is Amanda. And she possibly is working for a company that created another one of Daniel Mullen's games, the actual maker of Inscryption. But that game was called The Hex. And it's possible that Amanda, the agent, was possessed by the villain from The Hex. That might be why her acting is really wooden. At least that you can logically say it's like, oh, well, like that's why she's acting weird.
The game doesn't tell you any
No.
of this.
Game does not tell you any of this. It's just that like there's a flash of that pixelated villain's face on screen in her face just for a second. That's the only clue there is. But you had sent me a video after I finished it that explained that ending. So there's
It doesn't
like,
just explain the ending.
Mhm.
Going back to that that one bit with the numbers,
yeah,
this explains there's an ARG element to this game that you don't need to do, but actually you can't do it. It's already been solved.
yeah,
But you can look online and figure out this mystery went hard.
it did.
Like a great example is they actually buried a disc in the exact location said in the game,
Yeah, which
and
happens
that
to
held a
be
clue.
yeah, that happens to be Stanley Park up in Vancouver. It's a very nice place. I've actually walked around that area a couple of times. It's a really nice part of Vancouver, so highly recommend checking that out if you're just on vacation there. But it's amazing how intricate this went and how much is buried here that you can uncover if you go looking for it.
Yeah, and like I said, the mystery's been solved long time ago.
Yeah,
Go watch videos on it, and you'll be just blown away by the work so many people, like a community, literally had to come together and
Yeah.
help solve this thing.
they had to like pick apart different parts of Mullins's other games. There was like a prototype version of Inscryption that was created at a game jam that he hid clues in. There's that one screenshot of that line of code that you see. That's another part of the entire larger puzzle. It's ridiculous how deep this goes and how elaborate it got, but also just amazing how people came together and solved it.
Yeah, and I can't even remember the conclusion myself, so go look at it if you're all interested. And we've been going for over 2 hours, and we still have one part of the game we got to talk about.
So after you beat
And-
the game, you have a mod to the game called Casey's Mod. Can you explain that really quick?
Okay, so Casey's Mod is Leshy's part of the game. And what this is you get one starting deck to start off with, and you just play the first part of the game. No puzzles or anything of that nature. You just play the roguelike game. And each time you win, you get this set of challenges to add to it. Like start a game each round with one less health. I can't remember them all, but
There's like your backpack can only hold 2 items instead of 3.
Three,
Another one was like
yeah.
like the boss gets its own sigils, so like the boss fights have special
Oh, yeah.
abilities, and then you can stack these challenges together for even more of a challenge.
this is where I spent most of my time actually, because I platinumed this game.
Yeah.
In order to platinum it, you need to have gotten all the starter decks and then beat one time with all the challenges, and it is so hard to do.
Oh man. Okay. How do you unlock new decks?
You just unlock new decks by just progressing.
Okay.
You got to beat Leshy with an old deck you already used, along with certain number of challenges already done. A really good. Oh, I forgot. One really cool mechanic about this game. So there's a card called the Ringworm,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a ringworm literally seems like a squirrel that costs 1. So it literally seems counterintuitive. Like, what am I supposed to do with this 0 damage, 1 defense that costs 1? Well, there's one thing in the game where you can upgrade cards' health or attack, and it's a campfire. And Leshy is like, ooh, these strangers that are around a campfire and your creature, man, it could it gets a freebie of a +1 health or a +2 or a +2 health +1 attack, and you have a chance to go for another.
Yeah.
The second time it's like a 50-50 whether or not you get the bonus or they immediately eat your card and you don't have any.
Yeah. It's hilarious when that happens, when they do kill your card. the save icon immediately pops up on screen. So it's like
you
like,
can't
damn
save
it, no.
this.
It's like,
And the funny thing is, well, you can keep the bones and they give you 4 bones.
yeah,
But with a ringworm, if they eat your ringworm, next time you go to a campfire, those guys aren't around.
yeah,
So you get 2 free upgrades immediately.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that is one of the starter decks. And you're like, I get this. Because there are hidden mechanics in
Mhm.
some of those cards
Yeah.
that you don't realize. And they are really cool. But the weirdest one, so the final starter deck, you get these 3 eggs. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with these? I'm going to try and explain this the best I can. So there are different types of beast. You also have health and attack per card. In order to get these things to hatch, your deck needs 1 of each kind of beast, and it needs 1 card with 1 attack, 2 attack, 3 attack, and I think it goes up to 6. And then the same with health. And once when you get all those together, you get what's called a Hydra.
Oh,
A Hydra is a 1/5 thing, but it attacks 5 different times. And
Oh
it is
no.
broken as shit, and it is so cool. But it is so hard to unlock.
Okay. Okay.
And there's also a secret boss
Yeah.
in Casey's mod.
Yeah.
Leshy's moon gets replaced with a ghost pirate ship that has 80 health and can like destroy one of your cards with a cannon automatically. Ironically, it can help you a little by dropping skeletons on your side,
Mhm.
but those skeletons will die in after 1 use, whether they get hit or not.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's basically Casey's mod. Anything you want to add to it?
I think that just like how simple this game looks like it is, like how it starts. It's incredible how deep it goes with its mystery and what you can discover.
Yeah, that the big draw of the game is like going from what the hell is going on to even going more what the hell is going on. And you still need a YouTube video or 2 to fully understand what the hell went on at the end of it.
With like, hidden buried in Inscryption are Russian military secrets and also a possible computer virus that was once a video game that has now become sentient. So it is pretty wild as far as the game goes. And I really appreciate that you picked it.
Yeah, I appreciate you played it, and sounds like you had a great time.
I did. Okay, well, Jordan, remind us where people can find you.
Just look for Finished Game Review on Spotify. I'm not sure if it's on other podcast services.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I did everything right, but Spotify for sure. And hopefully Valkyria Chronicles will be out by the time this is out. We've had recording issues. We tried to record an episode a few weeks ago, didn't work out.
Oh, okay.
So the things are delayed, but I think in a day or 2, I'm getting on track on that.
Yeah. Okay. Again, thank you for joining me. For anyone listening, again, please like and subscribe wherever you are listening to this. It really helps our listenership. Thank you for listening to this long episode of the PlayStation Plus Game Club. And please remember, have a great day and have fun playing around.